Hello. Today I'd like to give a brief introduction into the basics of team policy debate. This is the form of debate that we will use in this class. And today I'm going to go over the purposes of debate, how to understand the topics and the participants, what sides are involved in the debate, what some of the terms mean, and how we're going to use them as we explore the topic of team policy debate. So first of all, we need to ask the basic question, what is the purpose of debate in the first place? And when we think about debating, a lot of times we might just think of, well, it's people having an argument. That's not really what debate is about. You've probably been involved in arguments before, with family, with friends, and a lot of times the goal of an argument is to hurt somebody or to vindicate yourself, make yourself feel better about something, or maybe you just need to verbally work through some frustration with somebody. Ultimately, though, the purpose of debate is to find truth. The purpose of debate is to find truth. The idea is that if you test any proposition against all possible arguments to the contrary, and it still looks like the best possible answer to a question, then it might be true. So the idea is test a something that might be true every way possible, and if there's an argument that seems to prove that it is not true, well then you've eliminated something that ended up being false. That's the idea. Does a debate always end up resulting in finding the truth? Not necessarily. It's not a perfect system, but that is always the goal. Next, the topic of a debate is called the resolution. The topic of the debate is called the resolution. So every debate is going to be based on a resolution that states a possible position or an area for developing policy. An example of a possible resolution that could apply to this school would be resolved that BCCS should significantly improve student morale in school. Resolved that BCCS should significantly improve student morale in school. So the debate would then have to do with what forms of planning could come up to create such an improvement. Should such an improvement happen in the first place? What would that look like? There are going to be two teams in every policy debate, and the first team is called the affirmative team. They are called the affirmative team because their job is to affirm the resolution. In this case, they would say, yes, we do believe that we should significantly improve student morale in school. And then if it's a policy debate, they must further show a way that that can practically happen. So they have to propose a policy. And that could be all sorts of things. Maybe they want to say, well, it would improve morale if lunch lasted 30 minutes longer. It would improve morale if the day ended an hour sooner or began an hour later. It would improve morale if, right, you can go on and on, they had a popcorn machine in the hall, if they had a soda fountain, if there was ping pong in the, whatever you might think of, right? They could propose something. The negative team is given the job to negate what the affirmative team is arguing. So they would say, no, we shouldn't uphold this resolution, or at least we should not uphold it in the way that the affirmative team is saying. So the affirmative team might say, we should improve morale, and we should do it by extending lunch for 30 minutes. The negative team says, no, that would create disadvantages that are worse than any advantage created, and for X, Y, and Z reasons, no, we're not going to do this. Okay, so the two teams are the affirmative team to affirm the resolution and provide a way to implement the resolution in policy, and the negative team tries to negate or argue against whatever it is that the affirmative team has brought up. Generally, that's how the two teams would behave. We call it a policy debate because in this version of debate, we're focused usually on particular policies. There are some debates where you would argue about values, like, is justice more important than security? Or is freedom of speech more important than, some other right or idea. Usually these are abstract ideas. For this, we're focusing on policies. Should we move the lunch out 30 minutes? Should we put in a cotton candy machine in the bathroom? Whatever it is, right? A particular policy. So, we gave some examples of what a policy could look like. Okay, so the debate is going to be divided among several different speeches, and later on we'll go and talk about what order all the speeches come, but there's basically three types of speeches or parts that a debate will have. The first and maybe most important part of the debate are going to be the constructive speeches. The affirmative team and the negative team both make constructive speeches, and these are simply speeches where the teams can bring up arguments for the first time. In a constructive speech, the affirmative team will explain what they stand for, how they want to implement what they stand for, how it's going to be good, how it's going to address needs, anything like that. The negative team will bring up all their new arguments against the affirmative team's plan, why they think it's a bad idea, what evidence they may have, all bringing up the case for or against the resolution. The next type of speech are called rebuttals. Rebuttals come after all constructive speeches have ended, and rebuttals do not bring up any new arguments. It's actually against the rules of debate for a new argument to be brought up in rebuttals. They are to respond to arguments that have already been brought up or expand upon arguments that have already been brought up. The final thing that we see in debates is called cross-examination, and there's going to be opportunities for both teams to ask direct questions of members of the other team. So whether the affirmative cross-examines the negative or the negative cross-examines the affirmative, and this gives each team an opportunity to ask clarifying questions, ask about the sources of different pieces of evidence, or anything like that. So it's sort of the most direct contact the two teams have in the round. So we've talked about today the purpose of debate, what the topic of the debate is called, the resolution, what the two teams are, affirmative and negative, and what they do, what a policy is. We talked about a couple of different examples of a policy if the resolution were about improving morale. We talked about three different types of speeches or parts of the debate: the constructive speeches, where you bring up new arguments; rebuttals, responding to old arguments or expanding on old arguments; and cross-examination, where the teams can ask different questions. We will give you a quiz to see how well you've been able to understand these terms. These are the basic building blocks of debate. And as we continue on, we're going to go and explain further how to build a case as the affirmative, how to attack a case as a negative, and then how to gather research about your topic. So we'll give you plenty of examples to try out some of these new tools in team policy debate.